StrayAllDay.com.
Be in a better place at a better time because you are tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's that go-getter energy. You know what I mean? When you just feel like making things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. You know what I'm talking about. And we put all this together in one bundle, one package, one method, one mindset, one philosophy, one book, one show into this masterclass, and we call it Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Congratulate yourself on being here. And today's topic is fuck all influencers. Fuck all of them. You're an influencer, fuck you. All influencers. You planning on being an influencer, fuck you in advance. Today's topic is fuck all influencers. Now, if you are new to me, you've never heard me before, maybe somebody shared this with you and you're listening to me for the first time, you've never heard of me before, this is a tongue-in-cheek statement. The title is tongue-in-cheek when I say fuck all influencers, but at the same time it's not tongue-in-cheek. And as I always do, I will explain exactly what I mean and give supporting evidence for my position. I am not trying to convince you to agree with me. If you don't agree with me, I don't give a fuck. This is my show. You can make your own episode talking about how you feel. It is tongue-in-cheek, but it's not. Now, I'm not talking about what I am talking about when I say fuck all influencers. I'm talking about the avatar, quote unquote, the avatar copy and paste influencers that I'm seeing out here these days that all look and all sound exactly the same. And I'm going to explain in my points here today exactly what I mean. Now, of course, as I already said, this is a tongue-in-cheek thing. I personally have done influencer work. I mean, somebody could label me as an influencer now. I don't know what exactly makes a person an influencer. If you do a brand deal, if you have a certain number of followers, if you have an audience, if you sell products or services, I don't know what the exact specific definition is. I think different people have different ways of looking at it, but I have definitely done things that will put me in the influencer category. So for me to say fuck all influencers wouldn't make any sense. I'd be saying fuck myself, which would be, physiologically, anatomy-wise, kind of hard to do. But today I'm going to explain why I say fuck all influencers, exactly what I mean. And if you happen to be one of the people if I happen to describe something that you do in today's episode, then shit, I'm talking about you. So you need to do something about that, or hey, you could do nothing about it. And when I make fuck all influencers part 2, I'll be talking about you again. So let's get into it. Point number 1, today's topic once again is fuck all influencers. What I'm talking about is, let me ask y'all a question. Y'all remember Barbie dolls? Do Barbie dolls still exist? I think they still make Barbie dolls, but y'all know what a Barbie doll is, right? The doll where it's this, I guess she's supposed to be white with blonde hair, and sometimes they had different color hair. I didn't play with Barbie dolls, but this was the toy made for females, young women, to play with the little dolls. And action figures, I guess, came with G.I. Joe and all that. And they eventually made a Ken doll. So you had Barbie needed a mate, so they made Ken. And Barbie and Ken dolls were these dolls that were exactly the same every single time. They had the original Barbie, and it came out probably way before I was even around. But even when I was a kid, Barbie dolls were a big thing, and they had Ken dolls by this point because Barbie needed a mate, needed a partner. So these two dolls was this female and male, and they would have these different clothes, and it would be like sport Barbie. So it would be Barbie with the sporting gear, then Barbie going to the gown with a gown and going to like some kind of ball or gala. Then it was Barbie going to school. Then it was Barbie doing business. Then it was Barbie with a car. Then it was Barbie with a family, with a house. Then it was Barbie, I don't know, Barbie the podcaster. Then it was Barbie the influencer. Who knows? It was all these different Barbies, right? They would come out with this whole line of Barbie and Ken dolls based on different themes. Barbie was doing this thing and doing that thing and that thing. And this way they got the consumers to continually buy the Barbie dolls, right? The Barbie and Ken dolls. And this is great business. I'm not knocking the Barbie and Ken brand, okay? Here's the thing though. Every single one of those Barbie and Ken dolls, the doll itself, you stripped it down, took all the clothes off and everything away, all the accessories away. It was the same fucking doll every single time. Only thing that was different was that the clothes were different. And again, I'm not knocking this. This is a great business move because it worked and people were buying this. Here's what I'm saying. Since it was the same body every time with different clothes, this is exactly what I'm seeing with a lot of influencers today online. It's the exact same process, the exact same cut and paste presentation. It's just different clothes. That's all that's changing. The clothes are different. You look different. You're from a different town. You may have a slightly different angle on what you're doing, but you sound just like this person over here, and they sound like this person over here, and they sound like that person over there, and they sound like that person over there. I'm not seeing too much originality, and that bothers me. I don't like seeing all of these carbon copy influencers, and I'm using influencers in air quotes. I'm not actually using air quotes while I'm talking here if you're watching this on the video, but that's the way I mean it when I say influencers, because again, I could fit into this category as well, but I don't fit this description. What I'm saying here is point number one. So what I'm seeing these days with influencers, somebody posts some story about how they went through some life struggle, then they made it through their life struggle. Now they have all these clients who they're helping overcome the same struggle, and you can be just as great as me, and then they're allegedly telling you that they have all these people signing up and they're helping them and it only costs this much, and I'm going to open it up again and you can get in it. Listen, fuck all that. I'm tired of hearing that shit. I'm tired of seeing that shit. Even if you were fucking doing it, even if that's what's really happening, please find an original way of getting your message out there. All right, I'm tired I don't want to keep seeing the same people using the same cut and paste. I mean, is there some kind of website or something that people are getting this from, like a template? You just plug in your name and your information and whatever struggle you allegedly went through, and then it spits out the Instagram caption for you to post. That's what it seems like I'm seeing these days. And I'm tired of seeing that, and that's one of the points that led to me coming out with this message here. It's called fuck all influencers. Or maybe it's different for you. You're all about personal growth and getting better, and you've been reading the books and all the rest, and you're letting everybody know about the books that you're reading, and you got the necessary post of you posting a picture of your bookshelf, or on a table you got all the books that you just bought, and I'm reading this author and that author, or you got the quote meme post of some famous influencer who's out there, something that they said to motivate your audience. Listen, let me tell you something. Even if you're telling the truth, even if this is how you really feel, even if this is how you really think, even if this is what you're really doing, you don't want to be a Barbie and Ken doll out here. Meaning you don't want your message and your presentation and your sound to be just like 30 other people who are doing the exact same thing. Because you got to remember something. The average consumer doesn't have time to go through everything that you're doing with a fine-tooth comb and figure out what makes you different from everybody else. What makes you different from everyone else is something that you had to suss that out for them. You got to make it clear for them, because they're not going to do all the work to try to figure it out. So if you sound just like him and he sounds just like her, and all y'all sound just like them over there, well, what happens is you all get boxed together in the same group. Even though I know down at the core, each of you is unique. But if your presentation is all exactly the same, I'm going to think you all the same. And what happens when you're the same as everybody else? You become what we call a commodity in the business world. You know what happens with commodities? That it becomes what they call a race to the bottom. Not a race to the top, but a race to the bottom. And the race to the bottom is in the form of price. Because if my presentation was exactly like 30 other people with a podcast, or 30 other athletes who are creating content, or 30 other people who want to talk some form of personal growth and personal development or business, if mine was the same as 30 other people, what would happen? You would look at me and say, okay, well, Dre, I could listen to you, but it's 29 other people I could listen to too. They talking about the same thing you're talking about, the same way you're talking about it. Why do I need to listen to you? Well, I can't answer that question because they're all exactly the same as me. So what I would have to do is somehow sweeten the deal for you, which means I might have to lower my prices. I got to have a lower price than the other 29 guys. But somebody's going to see I lower my price. They're going to lower theirs. Now I got to lower mine. Then someone else is going to lower theirs. Now, before we know it, we're all down at the bottom fighting for the scraps. We're all at the Walmart level when it comes to the value that we're asking for. And if you're only asking for a low level of value, how much value could you possibly deliver? All right, eventually you're going to go bankrupt. So this is the problem of racing to the bottom, and that problem exists when you are a commodity, when everything that you present is the same as what everybody else out there is presenting. If you don't have an original angle, if there's not something about your presentation that separates you from everybody else out there who may be talking about the same thing, may have gone through the same experience, may be trying to present themselves as somewhat similar to you, what the hell do we need you for? And the short answer is we don't. The long answer is, well, maybe we do need you, but your price is going to have to be really low because you got competitors who are just like you, and what do you offer that they don't? And you don't have an answer to the question because everything you present sounds just like him, her, and them over there. What are you bringing to the table that separates you from the Barbie and Ken dolls that look just like you, sound just like you? Even if you're telling the truth, this is the thing that I want you to understand. Even if you're telling the truth, this is your real truth. This is your real life. These are real stories that you're telling. If yours sound just like everybody else's, how do I know the difference? The answer is I don't. If your presentation is just like everybody else's, even if this is your true, what makes you different from the other 30 people who are doing the same thing? The answer is nothing. So what happens is now the game just becomes more and more crowded. Now we have more and more people calling themselves influencers or trying to appear as influencers. And now the people who are actually doing some real influence and bringing something unique and genuine and original to the game, now we gotta walk through the muddy waters of all you sorry motherfuckers just to get to the people that we need to influence, just to get to the people that we need to talk to. So now y'all in the way. Now y'all start fucking the game up. And then you get my attention. And then this episodes like this happen. Understand, if you sound the same as everybody else, I don't want to hear that shit. We don't need to hear that shit. I don't need to hear another person telling me how they struggled with this and this, then they got through it, and now they got 50 clients and they're helping all them, and now they're about to get a bunch more. I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear that shit. What else do you got to say that hasn't been said before? What do you have to deliver that hasn't been delivered yet? What angle do you have to approach us, the audience, from which no one else has approached yet? Do you have one? Have you even thought about it? Or did you just go look and see 20 other people doing one thing and say, oh, well, me too, I'm gonna do it too. And then you just made the whole game more crowded. Stop that shit. That's my directive to you. It's not a request. My directive to you is stop that shit. Tell me something that I have not heard before. I talked about this in masterclass number 1386. The title is How to Not Be Garbage, aka how to have something to say. And having something to say does not mean saying something that's already been accepted or something that everybody else has already said. It means saying something that we haven't heard yet. Tell me something that I don't know. Tell me something that I haven't been told yet. Masterclass number 1239. You know what the topic was? What people crave these days from your brand is authenticity. That was the title. Are you authentic? Because see, when you're truly authentic, you're presenting yourself and your material in such a way that it's coming from you. And we are all, as human beings, we're all unique. Right? There's nobody else who's exactly like you. There's nobody else who's exactly like him, her, them, or me. So if you're being your deepest, most authentic self, there shouldn't be anybody else who's just like you. All right, the Barbie and Ken dolls are inanimate objects. They're not real. All right, Barbie and Ken were modeled off of one individual person. So since when did it become everybody need to be just like that? That doesn't make any sense, does it? But this is what happens because as human beings, we are naturally followers. We're social creatures, which means we want to see what everybody else is doing. And if we see that one person is doing something a certain way and is being accepted, then, well, I want to be accepted too. So let me do what I see them doing. Or I want to be accepted too. Let me see what they're doing. I want to be accepted. Let me do what they're doing. And before you know it, you got a bunch of people who look and sound all exactly the same because they're all doing what they believe will be, quote, accepted, close quote. And then the problem is now everybody who's coming in thinks they need to do the exact same thing. And then we have no originality in the game. And then I got to come out and make this message. But I appreciate y'all for that because if that didn't happen, then we wouldn't be talking about this. We'd be talking about something else. But let's move on to point number 2. Today's topic is fuck all influencers. There used to be this device. Those of you who, I know they sold this device in the United States. And those of you who are old enough to remember, if you're under the age of, let's say if you're up to age, 30 and over, you probably remember this device. It was called the Club. The Club was a vehicle anti-theft device. Y'all remember the Club? It was like, this was before it was normal for every car to have the automatic anti-theft system, which is basically the power locks, where you could push the little button on your car keys and it will lock the car doors and it will beep that the car is locked and the alarm is on and there'd be a little red button beeping right on the inside of the window to deter thieves from trying to steal your car. So this is back when people could steal cars. They could just bust the window or pick the lock, get into your car, and somehow break the steering column, start the car with a screwdriver, and drive off with your car. So this is back then when that was a normal thing to happen. Luckily, that never happened to me. But the Club came out, and they used to sell this thing through infomercials. It was this long metal bar that had a couple of hooks on the inside of it that you would put every time you parked your car. You were supposed to take this Club, which you kept somewhere in your car, and lock it onto the steering wheel. Then you needed a key for the Club. You would lock the Club device, so this metal bar would be on your steering wheel, and it couldn't come off unless somebody had the key to unlock it, and therefore it would be impossible to steer a vehicle. Even if they were able to start the car, if someone was to break into and start your car, they couldn't drive away with it. They couldn't get far because they couldn't steer the actual car because the Club prevented the steering wheel from turning. So that was the great thing about the club. And I'm pretty sure the club, whoever created it, they sold a lot of money's worth of this device, because that infomercial for the club used to run on TV like incessantly for years. And I know many of you know what I'm talking about when I say the club. And anyway, I'm telling you about the club to tell you one thing that they used to say in their commercials. Because once the club became really popular, what happened is the exact thing that I just told you. When something becomes popular and accepted, and a lot of people have it. I had a club that I used to use on my car, and everybody on my block had the club on their car to make sure their car didn't get stolen. Once it became accepted, what happens? A bunch of other people start copying it. And in the business world, if you're doing something that's working, you're going to get knocked off, especially if you have a physical product. People are going to try to knock it off and make a cheap version of whatever it is you're selling. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go into Target or Walmart, and you're going to see cheap versions of products that cost 2 or 3 times the money at higher quality stores. I wouldn't even say higher quality stores, but stores that have a higher brand perception, let's say, as far as the value of their goods. You'll see Target and Walmart knocking these goods off and making their own versions and selling them for much cheaper, because they see that there's an opportunity to make money from it. That's the reason why they do it, not because they just want to copy, because they see the opportunity to make money. So the club, when it became really popular, other companies started making their own versions of the club. And they were selling them, they were undercutting the club on price. So the club and their infomercials, they started putting this one line in there: don't be fooled by cheap imitations. If you get the club, it will say on it, the club, on the device, this big metal bar, it'll say right there on it, the club. Do not be fooled by cheap imitations. I told you all of that story to tell you this thing. Here's point number 2. Don't be a cheap imitation of what's already out there. Don't be a cheap imitation of the club. See, this is what I don't want. I don't want a new version of someone who already exists. If that's what you call yourself, that's the way you're marketing yourself. Oh, I'm the new version of this person. I don't want to hear that shit. What do I need you for? I'll listen to the actual version. I don't want the female version of some man who's doing something, or the male version of some female who's doing something who's already out there. Why do I need another version of something that already exists? Why do I want a cheap imitation? Listen, if I want to listen to motherfucking Gary Vee, then I'll go watch Gary Vee. If I want Tony Robbins, damn it, I will listen to Tony Robbins. I don't need another version of either of them or anybody else that you want to name. All right? I don't need you to be the blank version of XYZ famous person who already exists. Why? Why would I want a cheap imitation? Listen, even if one of them individuals dies, I don't need you. Listen, they done created all the content. All right? All their content is on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and what's the other ones? All those other ones, their websites, whatever. All their materials already out there of them saying it. Why do I need to hear your version of it? For what? You are a cheap imitation of the club. All right? I don't want the Walmart version. All right? I want the real version. I want the Hermes version. I want the Louis Vuitton version. I want the Walmart version. So what are you representing? Who are you? Do you want a cheap imitation of the real thing, or do you want the real thing? The real person is already everywhere. Who are you if your way of getting someone's attention is to say, well, you know, I'm the young version of Tony Robbins. I'm the female version of Gary Vee. Or why the fuck do I want that? Why would I want that? I've been asking myself that question when I wrote out these notes, and now that I'm saying it, I'm still trying to wonder, why would I want that? The reason why you may think that that's a profitable path is because you see that it works to be Tony, it works to be Gary Vee, it works to be the Grant Cardone, it works to be, I don't know, name whoever else you think, whoever you like. I mean, there's so many out there. I don't know all of them. You don't know all of them. I might name some people you never even heard of, but you understand the point. You see that it's working to be that type of person. So, I'm gonna be the other version. I'm gonna be the new version. I'm the young version. I'm the real estate version. I'm the sales version. I'm the athlete version. No, fuck that. What you need to be is the 100% version of you. And then here's what you need to do next. You need to do the fucking work that allows an audience of people, which may be bigger or smaller than that of the person you already heard of, the person who inspired you, that allows that audience of people to accept you as the first version of you and be all right with that. So instead of being the young version of Gary Vee, how about you be the 100% version of you, the only version of you? And see, when you first come out as the only version of you, here's what's going to happen. I pause for a reason, because that's what's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen, because nobody's going to give a fuck. Nobody's ever heard of you. You haven't been accepted yet. But if you keep showing up and you keep doing the work and you keep putting yourself out there boldly and authentically, eventually somebody's going to say, you know what? I like this person. yeah, I know that him and her and they all exist, but I like your stuff. So I'm gonna keep listening to them, but I'm gonna listen to you too. And if you're good and you keep delivering, that person's gonna tell a friend. And then 2 other people are gonna hear about you. Then 15 people are gonna hear about you. And it might stay that way for a long time, and then 20 more people hear about you in a month. Then more people hear about you, and eventually you'll have your own audience. Instead of you trying to be a cheap imitation of somebody else, you can be the full version of yourself. The challenge of being a full version of yourself is that at first there's no big payoff for it. At first you don't have a big audience. At first you don't have a bunch of people saying, oh, I get it, that's perfect. Oh, I see what you're doing there. At first you're gonna have a whole bunch of people saying, who? What? Who are you? Where are you from? What are you talking about? You're gonna get a lot of confused looks. You're gonna get a lot of blank faces. You're gonna get a lot of no response. Are you mentally tough enough to deal with that and keep pushing out your 100% truth of you? Or are you gonna take the cheap way out and be a cheap imitation of the club? And the reason why I'm even having this conversation here today is because a lot of people took the cheap way out and became the cheap imitation of the club. Hopefully, this message influences either some of them to change their mind, or those of you who are thinking about jumping into this pool to jump in as the real version of you instead of the cheap version of somebody else. Because I'm tired of seeing cheap versions of people. I need some authenticity. That's what I need. I'm looking for somebody who can be authentic and bring something to the table that I haven't heard before. Not trying to be like somebody who already exists. Do we have any originals out there? The answer is yes. Everybody out there is an original, but do you present yourself as one, or are you doing what you think will be accepted by the crowd? Point number 3. Today's topic is fuck all influencers. In masterclass number 488, I told you about one of my virtual mentors. It goes by the name of Damon Dash. He was the co-founder, one of the co-founders of Rockefeller Records with a guy by the name of Jay-Z. And one of the things that Dame said, I heard him on a recent interview. I didn't talk about it back then in that masterclass, but one of the things I heard him say on a recent interview, I believe when actually he was on Mike Tyson, has his own podcast. And it's kind of good. Mike Tyson's not that great at asking questions. He has a co-host who's a little bit better at it. But Mike Tyson, because of the person he is, he's able to bring certain people onto the show. And I like hearing some of his guests. So I listened when he had Dame Dash on the show. And Dame told the story of, his name is a generation older than me. He told the story of being from Harlem, New York, and when crack cocaine hit the streets of New York back in the 1980s. He told the story of how there were kids who grew up with not much money, parents on welfare, not having much. When crack hit the streets, everybody all of a sudden became an entrepreneur. They were dealing drugs in the streets, and you had 15, 16-year-old kids who had more money than their parents, more money than their teachers. They were paying rent at their houses. They were driving around in cars. They had multiple cars. They had all the flashy jewelry and all the nice clothes because this crack cocaine gave them an opportunity to make money and get hood rich, at least, in a very short period of time. But the thing is, Damon went on to explain, the crack epidemic didn't last forever. I mean, it lasted for a period of time, but eventually the crack game was over. So who was left standing is the question. And it's the same thing with the influencer culture now. And the answer to that question, who was left standing, were the people who either didn't get so deep into that crack game they couldn't get out, because a lot of people who got into that drug dealing game back then, and some of you who are old enough to know, this, what happened to them. There's only 2 ways out of that game for the most part. You either get killed or you end up in a box. Well, end up in a box either way. You're either dead in a coffin or you're in a jail cell. Dame said the people who lasted, the people who were able to survive and talk about that era, people like himself, were people who might have dabbled in it, but they realized also at the same time, I shouldn't get too deep in this, because if I stay in this for too long, there's only 2 ways out of this. I need to figure out what's my exit strategy. What else can I do with the knowledge that I've gained from this, or the little bit of money that I made from this? How can I leverage this into something else? He partnered with another guy who had the same thoughts, a guy by the name of Jay-Z, and the rest became history. 50 Cent, same thing. He got damn near ended up in that box, right? Through getting shot, did something different. A guy like Puff Daddy, another guy I talked about on my Virtual Mentors episode. His father got killed as part of a drug deal when Puff was a very young kid, maybe 3 years old. And because of that, he was steered very strongly to stay out of that game, and he went straight into the music game. So this is all leading into the same question. Who gets left standing after the bubble bursts? Because right now, with influencer culture, we got a bubble. And this influencer bubble is going to eventually pop. Eventually, people, these Barbie and Ken dolls, people doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, not having a unique message, being garbage, not having anything really to say besides what they think is accepted and what everybody else is already saying. Eventually this bubble is going to burst. All right, the same way the real estate bubble bursted, the same way the .com bubble bursted, the influencer bubble is going to burst. And all these people who are, like Dame Dash said, 16-year-old kids riding around with cars, eventually you're going to end up in a box. Dead or in jail. Now, hopefully influencers, you don't end up dead or in jail, but your opportunity is going to be gone through copy and pasting and doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. The only people who are going to be left standing when the influencer bubble pops, let me tell you who they are. I'm going to describe them, okay? These are going to be the people who have built something genuine. Not the people who are just talking about being genuine, but actually are not genuine. The people who are building an audience through being authentic, through making real connections with the people that they're helping, through doing something and being something original that cannot be replicated or copied by anybody else out there in the game. Those are the people who are going to be left standing. As the saying goes, you never know who is swimming naked until the tide goes out, right? Everybody looks like they're doing great because you can only see them from the neck up. But when that tide goes out, you find out who doesn't have a bathing suit on. Are you going to be one of those people? Because these days, everybody looks and sounds good if you decide to dive into this influencer pool. The pool is getting crowded. Eventually, the pool is going to get drained. All right, are you tall enough to climb out of that pool? Point number 4. Today's topic is fuck all influencers. Let me tell you what I'm not saying here today. I'm not saying fuck the practice of influencing people, because influencing people has and always will exist. Okay, I'm not talking about the actual act, the standard definition of influencing people. What I'm talking about is the cheap, flaky version of influencing that is all the rage today. I could have said this at the beginning, but I saved it for the end. And if you've been wise enough to listen to the whole thing, then you're getting this point. And I'm also not against people who are genuine influencers, people who are influencers. You could define them as an influencer by the things that they do, but they're doing it in a genuine way. They're coming from a real place. They have something to say. They're bringing something original to the game. They're making a real connection with their audience, and they're helping people get real results. Those people, I'm not against them at all, because again, I put myself in that category. I'm talking about the copiers, the Me Tooers, I'm not talking about the hashtag Me Too. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Me Too people who come out and do the same thing that they see already working because they see there's some opportunity for them to get a little bit of shine or a little bit of fame or a little bit of validation by having followers on social media or whatever it is that makes you feel like you're somebody that's filling the empty hole in your soul. I'm talking about the copiers, people who aren't bringing anything to the game, the people who have nothing to say but they keep talking. People who are getting in the way and muddying up the game for everybody else. Those are the people that I'm talking about. If that happens to be you, then what I'm saying here today is fuck you. Get the hell out the game. You're getting in the way and you're making the game harder for people like myself. So get out the way before we have to take more drastic measures. Let's recap today's topic, which is fuck all influencers. Point number 1. I'm talking about the Barbie and Ken dolls. It was the Barbie and Ken. They sold you the same body every single time. They just give you different clothes and different accessories. That's exactly what we're getting today with a lot of, quote, influencers, close quote, who want to tell the same stories, how they made it through, and now they got all these clients they're helping, and they're traveling the world, and they're doing all these great things, and every picture in a different exotic location. Fuck all that. Okay, if you happen to be one of the people who's doing that, I'm not saying fuck you as a person. I'm saying fuck the practice of doing that. Stop doing that. All right, you can change anytime that you want to. But if you take it personally, you think I'm saying fuck you as a person, well, fuck you as a person. I really don't give a damn about offending people. In case you haven't noticed that, if you're a person who's all about personal growth and getting better, and you're reading the books and all the rest, listen. Even if you're telling the truth, you don't want to sound the same as everybody else. Listen, I tell you the truth every day here on this show, but I don't think I sound like anybody. Can you name somebody who I sound like? I don't sound like anybody. If me and another person sound similar, it's because they're copying my shit. It's not because I'm copying theirs. Like, I don't want to hear the shit of somebody saying the same thing that somebody else already said. And perception is reality. If you are perceived as being the same as anyone else, that means you're blending in and adding to the noise. Tell me something that I haven't heard before. Masterclasses 1386 and 1239. We talked about how to not be garbage by having something to say and how to be authentic, and that's what people actually want. Go listen to those. Point number 2. There was an anti-theft device called the Club that was very popular back in the 80s and the 90s, and maybe it's still out there now. But one thing they started saying when they started getting knocked off by competitors is do not be fooled by cheap imitations. These days, we got a lot of cheap imitations. We got a lot of cheap imitations of Gary Vee, a lot of cheap imitations of Tony Robbins, a lot of cheap imitations of fill in the blank influencer who you like. Listen, if I want to hear one of them, I'll go listen to them. Why do I need to hear you? What are you bringing to the table that does not exist, that they are not even bringing to the table? A lot of influencers, quote unquote, can't answer that question. And those are the people that I'm talking about today. Point number 3. Dame Dash in Masterclass 488 had talked about him, but I heard him in a recent interview say, when crack hit the streets back in the 80s, a lot of people went from 0 to 100 very quickly, but they went from 100 back to 0 very quickly as well because they didn't build anything to last. What are you building that's going to last for when the influencer bubble pops? Because it will eventually pop, and we won't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. Everybody looks and sounds good today, but what is it going to be tomorrow? Point number 4. I'm not saying fuck the practice of influencing people, because that has and will always exist. What I'm talking about is the cheap, flaky version of influencing that is all the rage now. I'm not against genuine influencers, because I put myself in that category. I'm talking about the copiers and the Me Too individuals who are getting in the damn way, moneying up the game for everybody. Fuck all of them. All right, now that we're clear on that, work on your game. Dre all day.